Welcome, gentle dreamers, to the sleepy cloud, where forgotten tales drift softly through the night. Close your eyes, take a slow breath, and let this story guide you to a quiet, glowing world where memories dance like candle flames. Tonight, we begin the Forgotten Festival of Firelight, an ancient story about the people who once lit the night to keep the darkness kind. The valley of Ashen Vale slept beneath mountains that looked like wings. Every night, the wind hummed softly through the trees, carrying whispers of a festival no one remembered anymore. Only one person still kept a single lantern burning, Liora, the lantern keeper. Her small home stood at the edge of the vale, its windows warm with light, while the rest of the village slept in shadow. Each evening, she polished her glass lanterns until they gleamed like drops of sunlight, and each dawn she whispered a wish into the flame before it faded. The others called her the Keeper of Nothing. They said the old festival of firelight was a myth, a dream told by travelers and forgotten by time. But Liora believed differently. She had seen the glow in her dreams, a night when every hill sparkled with flame, and laughter echoed from the mountains to the sea. Her grandmother had told her long ago, when the world forgets the fire, the darkness will learn to speak. Now, each night, she heard that whisper, faint like breath against her ear from the empty forest. One autumn morning, a stranger arrived. His boots were worn, his cloak dusted with long roads. He carried a carved wooden staff and eyes that looked like they had seen too many goodbyes. "Are you the Keeper of Lights?" he asked, standing at Liora's gate. "I'm the only one left," she said softly. He smiled, tired but kind. "Then perhaps you can tell me why the stars no longer shine over Ashen Vale." His name was Tarin, a wanderer who gathered forgotten stories. He carried a book filled with drawings and notes about lost festivals, sleeping gods, and ancient songs. When he heard of a valley that once glowed brighter than dawn, he came searching. Liora invited him in. Her cottage smelled of wax and warm bread. The shelves were full of small lamps, some cracked, some unlit for years. As Tarin traced the patterns carved into one of them, he asked, "Why do you still keep them burning?" Liora looked at her lanterns, her eyes reflecting their gold. "Because light remembers, even when we don't." That evening, Tarin sat by the hearth as Liora told him about the Festival of Firelight. How once every 100 years, the villagers would light lanterns filled with spirit flame to honor the Ember Guardian, the spirit who warmed the earth's heart. But one year, fear took hold. The crops failed, the night grew cold, and the people decided the fire spirits had abandoned them. The festival was never held again. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe the spirits were waiting for us to remember, Tarin said. Before Liora could reply, the door creaked. A third voice came from the shadows. "You speak of remembering," said the old man who stepped in, "but memory alone cannot relight the dark." It was Eshan, the village storyteller. His hair was silver like frost, and his walking stick tapped softly as he entered. He looked between them, eyes filled with old sadness. "I once told that story to a crowd, but they laughed. They said the firelight was just a tale for children." He turned to Liora's lantern, "Yet here you are, keeping the last flame alive." Tarin rose and bowed. "Maybe 3 voices are enough to begin again." Eshan smiled, a slow, wrinkled smile. "Perhaps, But the Ember Guardian does not answer words. It answers courage. Outside, the wind began to howl. The flame in Liora's lantern flickered, almost dying, then flared blue. The three of them stared. "That's never happened before," she whispered. Eshan's old eyes widened. "Blue fire. That is the color of the Guardian's breath. It means it still remembers you." Tarin leaned forward. "Then maybe the festival isn't gone. Maybe it's waiting beneath the ashes." The old storyteller nodded slowly. "If that is true, we will have to find where the first flame was kept, the Ember Heart Shrine. It lies somewhere beyond the valley, but no map shows its path now." Liora looked at her small blue flame dancing before her. "Then we'll follow the light," she said. The three of them stood before the night. As the stars dimmed and the lantern shone brighter, a single spark against the forgotten dark. And somewhere deep in the mountain's chest, something stirred. A heartbeat made of flame. The next morning came quietly. Mist rested over the valley like a folded blanket. The trees shimmered with dew, and the river hummed low beneath the stone bridge. Inside her cottage, Liora wrapped the glowing blue lantern in a silk cloth and hung it from her belt. Tarin checked his map, though it held only guesses and half-remembered paths. And Eshan, the old storyteller, leaned on his walking stick, humming an ancient tune, the song once sung at the Firelight Festival. The three travelers stood at the edge of Ashen Vale. The mountains loomed before them, their peaks pale against the rising sun. Behind them, the village slept, unaware that its forgotten tale was about to awaken again. "Once we cross these hills," Tarin said, "there will be no more roads, only stories and stones." "Stories have led us this far," Eshan murmured, smiling faintly. "Let them lead us home again." They walked until the valley grew small behind them. The path wound through old cedar forests where the air smelled of ash and honey. Every so often, Liora lifted her lantern, and each time the blue flame flickered brighter, as if showing the way. Tarin began to sketch in his book. He drew the flame, the trees, and Eshan's shadow stretching like ink across the moss. "Why do you write everything down?" Liora asked softly. He smiled, not looking up. "Because stories vanish faster than smoke. If we don't catch them, they forget themselves." Eshan chuckled. "And if we do catch them, they become heavy. Stories are meant to be breathed, not trapped." Liora listened quietly. She liked how both were right, how Tarin carried stories in his hands, while Eshan carried them in his heart. By midday, the sun burned gold through the mist, and they came upon a field of blackened stone. The ground was cracked and warm beneath their boots, as if fire once slept beneath it. At the center stood an ancient pillar of obsidian, carved with faint runes. The writing shimmered faintly when Liora raised her lantern near it. Eshan's eyes softened with awe. "This is old, older than the village itself. These markings speak of the Path of Embers. It was said to guide the first keepers to the Heartfire Shrine." Tarin brushed away dust, tracing the glowing runes with his fingers. "Can you read it?" he asked. "Some of it," Eshan whispered. He leaned close and began to sound out the faded words. "When darkness forgets its flame, follow the breath of fire. When stone remembers warmth, the path shall open once more." The ground trembled faintly beneath them. The flame in Liora's lantern pulsed, sending out a thin ribbon of blue light that flowed across the stones like water. It curved gently east, into the forest ahead. "The lantern is showing us," Liora said, her voice trembling. "Then let's follow before it fades," Tarin replied. The forest beyond the stones was strange and still. The air shimmered with heat, though no sun broke through the canopy. At times, the travelers thought they heard whispers, faint voices, calling in a language older than memory. Liora held her lantern high. The blue light cast long, soft shadows that seemed to move when she wasn't looking. "Are those voices real?" she asked quietly. Eshan nodded. "The forest remembers the festival. Every spark, every ember, they sing the same song. They just wait for someone to listen again." As they walked deeper, they came upon a pool of clear water, glowing faintly from below. Tarin knelt beside it and touched the surface, warm like breath. "This must be one of the ember pools," Tarin said. "Old legends said the fire spirits cooled their flames here to rest." Liora leaned closer, and her reflection shimmered in the glowing surface. But it wasn't only her face. For a moment, she saw 100 lanterns floating behind her, carried by unseen hands. The festival, alive again, only in the water's dream. When she blinked, the vision vanished. Only the blue lantern burned beside her. "I saw them," she whispered. "The old ones, the lights of the festival." Eshan smiled gently. "Then the fire spirits remember you too." They rested by the pool as dusk approached. The forest had grown warmer, the air humming softly. Tarin built a small fire and cooked what little food they had brought. Eshan told a story, slow and deep, his voice like a river stone. It was said that the first keeper of Firelight was a woman named Sari of the Dawn. She carried a single flame across the mountains after her village fell to frost. Wherever she walked, the snow melted and flowers bloomed. But she did not use the flame to destroy the cold. She shared it, and that is how the first festival began. Liora listened, eyes glowing like the lantern. "Maybe she will guide us too." Tarin nodded. "Then tomorrow, we follow her path, east toward the old caves. The shrine must be near." That night, Liora couldn't sleep. She sat beside the small fire, holding the lantern in her lap. The flame pulsed gently, once, twice, like a heartbeat. She whispered, "Guardian of fire, are you still there?" The flame flickered, and for a moment she heard a faint voice, a sigh carried on the warm air. "Remember, the heart does not forget its light." She gasped softly, looking around, but only the forest answered, full of glowing fireflies, drifting like lost stars. Eshan stirred in his sleep, murmuring old words. Tarin's book lay open beside him, a drawing half finished, 3 figures standing beneath a mountain that glowed from within. Liora smiled faintly. Maybe the flame really was leading them. By dawn, they packed their things again. The mist rose in ribbons of silver and smoke. "The path will test us," Eshan said quietly as they walked. "The old stories say the shrine hides behind trials of memory and flame." Tarin grinned. "Then let's hope the fire remembers mercy." Liora lifted her lantern, its blue glow steady now. "It will," she said softly, "because we've already begun to remember." And as they stepped deeper into the mountains, the forest light faded behind them, leaving only the whisper of flames and the promise of the forgotten festival waiting ahead. The mountains grew taller as the days stretched on. Shadows spilled down their sides like ink, and the air turned cool and dry. The sound of their footsteps echoed softly against stone walls, blending with the low hum that came from somewhere deep inside the earth. Liora, Tarin, and Eshan followed a narrow trail that wound upward between ridges of red rock. The flame in Liora's lantern had grown stronger, no longer soft and shy, but alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. Eshan paused to catch his breath. "The air smells of ash," he murmured. "We're close." "To what?" Tarin asked. Eshan's eyes glimmered faintly. "To the place where fire sleeps when it forgets the world." By noon, they reached the mouth of a great cavern, its entrance shaped like the open jaws of a beast. Warm air drifted from within, carrying a faint golden glow that shimmered on the rocks. Tarin ran his hand along the wall. The stone was smooth and warm, carved with ancient spirals. "The Whispering Caves," he said softly. "I read about these once. They say the echoes here are not just sound, they are memory itself." Liora looked into the darkness. The flame in her lantern fluttered and then steadied, glowing brighter. "Then maybe it remembers us too." Eshan nodded. "Be careful what you speak here. The caves repeat what the heart hides." They stepped inside. At once, the world changed. The air thickened with warmth. Every sound, every breath, every step stretched and came back softer, as if the cave itself were thinking about it before replying. Liora's lantern painted the walls in blue and gold. Strange shapes danced across the stone. Old carvings of people holding lanterns, fire swirling in their hands like ribbons. "It's the festival," Tarin whispered. "They used to dance here." Eshan reached out, tracing one of the carvings. His fingers trembled. "I told these stories for years, but I never believed I'd walk inside them." As they went deeper, the light ahead grew stronger, not from the lantern, but from the walls themselves. Tiny flecks of gold shimmered like stars trapped in stone. Then they heard it. A soft sound, not quite words, not quite wind. It seemed to come from all directions at once. "Fire forgotten, light unspoken." The voice was gentle, like smoke curling through a dream. Liora froze, holding her lantern close. "Did you hear that?" Tarin nodded slowly. "It's the cave." Eshan closed his eyes, listening. The voice came again, clearer now. "3 flames walk where one once burned. Bring memory to the hollow, and the path shall be opened." The ground trembled softly beneath their feet. Dust fell from the ceiling like tiny sparks. "What does it mean?" Liora asked. Eshan looked toward the deeper tunnels. "It means the cave wants us to remember, not with our minds, but with our hearts." They walked on until they came to a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched high above them, lost in shadow. At the center stood a circle of old stone pedestals, each carved with a symbol: a lantern, a flame, a tear, and a heart. Tarin ran his fingers over the carvings. He said quietly, "It's a test, like the stories said." Liora stepped forward. Her lantern glowed brighter, casting light on the 4 symbols. "The flame is alive," she whispered. "It's asking us to choose." Eshan nodded slowly. "Then listen to it." She closed her eyes. The cave was silent except for her breathing, and then, softly, the lantern's flame shifted from blue to gold. It leaned toward the symbol of the heart. Without fear, she touched it. The moment her fingers brushed the stone, the room filled with light. Not harsh or burning, but warm and soft, like sunlight through honey. Images bloomed around them. The valley in celebration, lanterns rising like stars, children laughing, and the Ember Guardian, a great figure of flame and shadow, smiling as the people danced. Tarin gasped, This is the festival!" Eshan's voice broke. "I remember now. I was a boy. I saw it once before it faded." The vision wavered and then faded back into darkness. The cave was quiet again, except for the sound of the lantern's gentle hum. From the far wall, a doorway of light appeared, faint but real, glowing like molten gold. "The path," Tarin whispered. "We've opened it." Liora nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. "The cave remembered us." They stepped through the light. The air changed, cooler, cleaner. Behind them, the whispering faded into silence. Ahead, the mountain opened into a narrow tunnel that smelled of rain and smoke. Eshan turned to Liora. "You did well, child. The Guardian's fire knows your heart." Liora smiled softly. "It's not just mine anymore. It's ours." They rested for a while outside the tunnel, sitting on the warm stones. Tarin sketched what he had seen, the circle of pedestals, the glowing vision of the festival. Eshan told them, when the festival was last held, the people believed that if they forgot gratitude, the fire would sleep. But it seems the fire never truly sleeps. It just waits to be remembered. Liora looked down at her lantern, its golden blue flame steady. "Then maybe we've started to wake it up." As night fell over the mountains, they made camp near a spring that glowed faintly from the fire's reflection. The stars above them looked brighter than before, as if they too were remembering how to shine. Tarin closed his journal and leaned back. If the caves were the test of memory, then what comes next? Eshan's voice was soft but sure. The Heartfire Shrine, and the Guardian who still dreams there. Liora whispered, "And maybe the reason the festival was truly forgotten." The fire crackled, soft and sleepy. The mountain air carried the scent of ash and blossoms. Tomorrow they would climb higher, toward the heart of the fire itself. The morning after they left the Whispering Caves, the sky was pale and silver. Thin clouds curled over the mountain peaks, and the air shimmered faintly with heat, even though no sun shone through. Liora, Tarin, and Eshan climbed slowly, their boots crunching on black volcanic stone. With every step, the blue-gold lantern on Liora's belt glowed brighter, guiding them higher into the mist. "The air feels alive," Tarin murmured. Eshan nodded. "We are walking on the skin of the ancient flame. These mountains were born from the Guardian's first breath." Liora touched her lantern gently. "Then maybe it's breathing again." They followed a narrow ridge until they reached a cliff that looked over a vast hollow, a crater filled with glowing mist and floating sparks. Deep below, a river of slow fire coiled like a sleeping serpent, bright veins of orange and gold pulsing beneath the rock. "The Heartfire," Eshan whispered, awe softening his voice. "We've found it." Tarin leaned forward carefully, sketching the view. "I thought it would be burning wildly," he said, "but it's calm, almost peaceful. The Guardian's fire never burns in anger. It waits, it listens, it tests." Liora's lantern flickered suddenly, the flame turning pure white. "It wants us to go down there, to the center. Eshan looked doubtful. The path will not be easy. The stories say the heart fire tests every traveler's truth. Tarin smiled, tired but brave. Then the truth will have to be enough. They began their descent along a spiral path carved into the rock, old and cracked from centuries of silence. The air grew warmer, shimmering with golden dust. Halfway down, they came upon a stone bridge that crossed the glowing river. The bridge was lined with statues, tall, faceless figures holding lanterns that no longer burned. Liora stopped before one of them. "They look like us," she whispered. Eshan ran his fingers along the statue's arm. They were the first keepers, the ones who brought the light to their people. Every 100 years, new keepers were chosen to awaken the fire again. Tarin tilted his head. So, why did they stop? Eshan's face darkened. Fear. The cold years came. The people began to think the fire demanded too much, that it brought drought and storms. So they locked it away. They forgot the truth. The fire never took, it gave. Liora touched the statue's chest gently, and for a moment the stone glowed beneath her fingers, faint but real. "Then maybe it's time we give again," she said. As they crossed the bridge, the air trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber, not of stone breaking, but of something awakening. The river of fire brightened, and a shape began to rise from the molten glow, a figure woven from flame and shadow, vast and beautiful. Its eyes were like twin embers, and its voice, when it spoke, filled the air with warmth. Who awakens the heart that was silenced? Liora fell to her knees, her lantern shining like a star. "We do," she said softly. "The people of Ashen Vale. We forgot the Firelight Festival, and we came to remember it." The gaze turned toward Eshan and Tarin. "3 hearts for 1 flame? Why have you come so far?" Tarin stepped forward, trembling but steady. "Because stories fade, but some stories deserve to live again." Eshan bowed his head. "Because we are old, and our hearts grew cold. We want to make them warm once more." The great fire being, the Ember Guardian, looked at Liora. "And you, Keeper of Light, what do you seek?" Liora lifted her lantern. Its flame blazed brighter than ever, filling the whole cavern with light. "I seek not power, but memory, so that no child will grow up in darkness, thinking the fire has left them." The guardian was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, it reached out a hand made of living flame and touched the lantern. The flame inside burst into colors, gold, red, and blue, and the cavern roared with light. The statues along the bridge lit up one by one, their lanterns blazing after centuries of silence. "The Festival of Firelight shall burn once more," the guardian said. "But know this, light must be shared. Hold it only for yourself, and it will fade again." Liora nodded, tears in her eyes. "Then we'll carry it home." The guardian's voice softened. "Then go and let the night remember the warmth of the dawn." The light dimmed slowly, the figure sinking back into the molten glow. The fire quieted once more, leaving only the hum of heat and the whisper of breathing stone. The 3 travelers stood in silence for a long moment, surrounded by golden light.
Eshan finally smiled, old eyes shimmering. We have done what no one dared. We have spoken to the flame itself. Tarin closed his journal gently. And now we carry its story. Liora held the lantern close. The white flame burned softly, steady, and calm. The guardian said the festival will return, but will the people believe? Eshan chuckled softly. They will when they see you coming down the mountain with a flame that never dies. They climbed back toward the surface. The path that had once seemed endless now felt light beneath their feet. When they reached the ridge again, the valley stretched before them, gray, silent, and waiting. Liora lifted her lantern high, and a soft wind stirred through the mountains. Sparks danced on the breeze, small glowing embers drifting towards Ashen Vale. The fire is going home, Tarin whispered. Eshan nodded, and soon the people will follow. That night they camped one last time beneath the stars. The flame burned beside them, quiet but alive. Tarin wrote until his hands ached, filling page after page with what they had seen. Eshan hummed the old song again, his voice trembling but full of peace. And Liora sat beside the flame, whispering softly to it. We'll bring you back to the world, and this time we won't forget. Above them, a single star flared bright, then another, until the whole sky glittered, as if the heavens themselves were remembering the festival, too.
The sun rose softly over the mountains, painting the sky in pale gold. For the first time in generations, warm light fell over Ashen Vale, though no one yet understood why. On a distant ridge, 3 travelers began their descent: Liora, Tarin, and Eshan, carrying a single white flame that had slept for 100 years. The lantern at Liora's side glowed gently, and every time the wind touched it, tiny sparks drifted into the air like floating memories. The mountain looks different now, Tarin said quietly. It's not the mountain, it's us. We carry its fire in our hearts now. Liora smiled faintly, brushing her fingers across the lantern's warm glass. Then let's share it before the world forgets again. The road back to the valley was long. They crossed the same forest where the ember pools glowed, but now the trees seemed to shimmer faintly in their presence. The leaves caught bits of golden light, and when the wind passed through, it sounded like laughter, the kind once heard during the festival nights. Tarin paused by a stream and cupped water into his hands. When I first came here, this valley felt asleep. Now it feels like it's breathing again. Eshan leaned on his walking stick. The flame is more than fire. It's memory, joy, and kindness. When people forget to share those things, the world grows cold. Liora nodded softly. Then tonight, we'll share it again. By the time they reached the outskirts of Ashen Vale, dusk was falling. The village lay quiet, its windows dark, its streets empty. Smoke rose faintly from chimneys, but no laughter, no music, no light filled the air. Children peeked from doorways as the travelers entered, whispering to one another. The elders watched silently, their faces shadowed by disbelief. "Is that a flame?" someone murmured. "It can't be. No fire burns that bright." Liora stepped to the center of the square, her lantern shining like a small sun. "People of Ashen Vale," she said softly, her voice steady. "You have lived too long in shadow, but the fire never left us. It only waited." Tarin stood beside her, opening his journal. "We found the Heartfire Shrine. We saw the Ember Guardian. The stories were true, and the fire remembers us still." Eshan raised his old hand, his voice deep and calm.
Long ago, we feared the flame. We thought it punished us. But the fire was never angry. It was lonely. It only wanted us to remember gratitude and hope. The villagers murmured, uncertain. Some stepped closer, drawn to the light. Others hung back, afraid. Then Liora knelt and placed the lantern on the ground. Its flame flickered once, then split into three: gold, blue, and white. The flames floated upward, drifting gently through the air, touching each of the old lamps that hung along the square. One by one, they lit, a golden wave spreading through the village until every corner glowed. Children gasped. Old women wept softly. Even the youngest, who had never seen the festival, began to smile as the light painted their faces. Tarin whispered, "It's starting again." Eshan nodded, his eyes glistening. The Festival of Firelight returns. Someone began to hum, an old tune, shaky but remembered. Then another joined in. Soon the square filled with soft voices singing the melody of the fire. Liora stood in the center, the lantern glowing bright in her hands. For the first time, she felt the valley alive, hearts opening like blossoms to the warmth. The villagers began to hang new lanterns, crafted hastily from paper and clay. The children ran about chasing the drifting sparks that floated from the sky. And though no one saw how it happened, the stars above seemed to shine brighter too, as if the heavens were joining in the celebration. Later that night, when the music softened and the laughter turned to quiet conversation, Ashen sat beside the fire with the children. "Tell us, old one," a boy asked, "what does the flame mean?" Ashen smiled gently. "It means that warmth shared becomes light. When we hold our light for ourselves, it fades. But when we give it away, when we share kindness, love, or courage, it grows brighter. That is what the festival teaches us." The boy nodded slowly, staring into the flame. "Then I'll never forget." Ashen chuckled. "That is how it begins, one heart remembering." Meanwhile, Tarin sat on the steps of the well, his book open on his lap. He began to write the last lines of his journey. The festival was not found, it was remembered. And those who carried the fire carried home something greater than light. They carried the promise that no story, once loved, can truly die. He smiled softly, closing the journal. Liora walked through the crowd, her heart full. She saw people laughing, sharing bread, holding hands, things they had not done in years. She felt the guardian's warmth around her, as if watching from the mountain's heart. She lifted the lantern one last time and whispered, "Thank you." The flame pulsed gently, as if answering her, and a wave of soft golden sparks floated upward, disappearing into the stars. As midnight approached, the entire valley glowed. Lanterns floated on the river, climbing skyward like tiny suns. The air was alive with song and the scent of burning cedar. Ashen leaned close to Liora. "The fire will sleep again one day," he said, "but now it will not be forgotten." Liora smiled, "Because we'll keep telling the story." "And one day," Tarin added, "someone else will find it and carry it forward again." The three of them sat together, surrounded by light, as the village danced around them. The fire, the laughter, the memory, all alive once more.
The festival stretched deep into the night. Lanterns floated over the river like drifting stars, and songs rose softly into the quiet sky. For the first time in a century, Ashen Vale glowed again. Liora stood at the edge of the square, her lantern hanging from her hand. The flame inside burned steady and white, pure, calm, and alive. She watched as the children ran past, laughing and carrying tiny candles in clay cups. Every face was warm with wonder. Beside her, Eshan smiled. "I have told this story all my life," he said, "but I never imagined I'd live to see it come true." Liora looked at him gently. "You helped keep the memory alive, even when no one listened." He chuckled softly. "Ah, child, stories are like embers. Even when they seem cold, one breath of faith can make them glow again." As dawn crept over the mountains, the last of the lanterns began to fade into the pale morning sky. The villagers grew quiet, standing together in peaceful silence. Eshan stepped forward and lifted his walking stick high. "People of Ashen Vale," he called, "the fire has returned. But remember this, it does not belong to one knight, nor one keeper. It belongs to all who share their light." He turned to Liora, his eyes kind and proud. "Keeper of Firelight, what will you do now?" Liora looked at the glowing horizon. "I'll keep the lantern burning," she said softly, "but I'll teach others to light their own. The flame was never meant to stay in one hand." Tarin smiled. "Then the festival will never truly end." After the crowd dispersed, Tarin sat by the riverside with his journal. The water shimmered gold beneath the morning sun, reflecting the few lanterns that still drifted. He wrote slowly, carefully, his words shaped by the quiet of dawn. "The fire is not a gift of gods or spirits. It is the light of remembering, the warmth we make when we care for one another. And when we forget, it waits patiently in the dark until someone, kind, brave, and gentle, remembers again." He closed his book and sighed contentedly. "That's the end of this journey," he said aloud. Eshan, sitting nearby, smiled. "Stories never end, Tarin. They rest until someone needs them again." As the morning light grew brighter, the villagers began planting new lantern poles along the riverbank, vowing to relight them every year. The air was filled with laughter, and even the birds seemed to sing with new life. Liora watched as a small girl approached her, holding a clay cup with a tiny flame inside. "Miss Liora," the girl said shyly, "Mama said I could light one for my grandmother. She always said she missed the firelight nights." Liora knelt down, smiling, "Then light it with love, and she will see it wherever she is." The little girl nodded and set her lantern gently on the water. It floated away, glowing softly as it joined the others. Later that afternoon, Liora, Tarin, and Eshan walked to the hill overlooking the valley. From there they could see every roof, every glowing window, every small spark that carried the spirit of the festival. "The guardian would be proud," Tarin said quietly. Eshan nodded. "The mountain is quiet again. That means it's at peace." Liora looked at her lantern. Its flame had dimmed slightly, becoming soft and golden. She realized it no longer needed to burn brightly. The light had already spread. She smiled, tears of joy in her eyes. The fire doesn't need to shine in one place anymore. It's part of all of us now. As evening returned, A gentle breeze swept through the valley. It carried the scent of cedar, smoke, and flowers, the same scent that had filled the air when the festival was new. The villagers gathered one last time before nightfall. Liora stood before them with her lantern, its light small but steady. She spoke softly, her voice carrying through the quiet air. This flame began in the mountains. It traveled through darkness, through fear, and through silence. It belongs to everyone who remembers to be kind, to share warmth, to forgive, to hope. The Festival of Firelight is not just tonight. It is every act of love, every word of kindness, every spark of courage. She lifted the lantern high, and for the last time the flame flared, not to light the valley, but to fill every heart watching. The people bowed their heads. The wind carried the light away in a wave of tiny glowing embers that floated upward, vanishing into the stars. And as they faded, the voice of the Ember Guardian echoed faintly through the air, gentle like the memory of warmth. The fire that is shared will never fade. That night, peace settled over Ashen Vale. The mountains slept, the rivers glowed faintly under the moonlight, and in every home a single small lantern burned quietly by the window, a promise to never forget. Tarin closed his journal one final time. Eshan rested, his head tilted toward the fire. Liora sat beside the glowing lantern, her eyes soft and full of calm. Outside, the stars shimmered like distant flames, and somewhere deep within the mountain, a low, steady heartbeat pulsed, not of stone or fire, but of memory. As the last embers fade, may your dreams tonight be filled with warmth, kindness, and gentle light. Remember, even the smallest flame can guide you through the darkest night. You've been listening to The Forgotten Festival of Firelight, told softly by the sleepy cloud. Until next time, may your lantern always glow and your heart stay warm.